Welcome to episode 100 of Now and Zen. In this episode, we take a deep dive into the iconic Christopher Bailey piece in 17-tone equal temperament, Lost and Found Things. The culmination of a years-long negotiation with vocal performance, technology, and tone row-based composition. I find it a fitting tribute, a reminder of my origins in Un-12 camp, and a nice callback to episode 004 of Now and Zen. We explore two conversations in this episode. For the recording of Lost and Found Things, movements 1, 3, and 4, Chris brought myself, Jacob, Barton, and Thomas Scheurich down to Kentucky to his cousin's recording studio so we could create the music together with an intense couple of days. This first conversation contains the four of us, together, musing about the experience we've just had and the possibilities. Here we go. We're now recording. Okay. Neat. So, we have just come back from recording the first, third, and fourth movements of Christopher Bailey's piece, Lost and Found Things. And
we should begin by saying, don't get too excited yet. It'll probably be a while until we or you can hear it. All the same.
Yes. What Thomas said. Well, anyway, we're just chatting about kind of what the process was like, because it involves some guide tracks and some expertise. I, Stephen Weigel, am here, and sitting with me is Jacob Barton, Thomas Scheurich, and Christopher Bailey, the composer. And Jacob and Thomas and I were singing, and Christopher was in the control room. So I guess the first thing I'm wondering is, I don't know if we talked about this in the other episode already, Chris, but I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of the history of Lost and Found Things, the piece, and how it started initially, and how you recorded 2, and then what techniques you may have used from 2 to help create materials for 1, 3, and 4. Or maybe you created them, like, all in order. Like, I'd be interested to know how the creation process influenced your preparation materials.
Well, I wrote number 2 on its own to begin with, and I can't remember if I even... I guess I wrote it actually to be performed live, and it actually was performed live. Jacob and a group of folks. Was that at Rice when you did that, or
the 17-tone piano project was at phase 4 when we were trying to get vocal songs, and so it was a vocal song. So that would have been spring of 2008, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah. So it was probably for that project that I wrote it, and then we went into the studio and with 4 vocalists. Jacob was one of them, and we kind of loop tracked all the different, like, small segments of music with the idea that if you listen to a small fragment of music and sing it repeatedly, let's say 10 or 20 or whatever, however many times, by the time you get to like the last 4 to 5 times or so, you've gotten the hang of the tuning or whatever weird, intervals are there, and you're actually singing it pretty well in tune. And that, and so then when I mix the piece, I grab like the last 5 takes of each gesture, and now I have all these material that can be chorused and layered, and it's all basically in tune correctly, and it works.
Yeah, let's make sure that we zero in on that method more. Get specific about what we did, how it worked.
Yes, I was thinking that would be kind of the next thing that we could talk about, because I guess with most guide track compositions in microtonality that I'm aware of, the idea is that the guide track simply follows the music and you follow the music. But where Chris's approach is different is that not only are his snippets based in fragments of the music, sometimes the fragments will be so small as well that it'll be like 2 notes. Yeah. So we were in the studio.
Well, that was, I would say that, actually, if you listen to I think it's the second episode of Now and Zen, we talk a little bit about how we recorded that song, and there's some examples and stuff. And I don't think it was too extreme back then. Like, we would do, I don't know, maybe 5-note melodies, especially if that was a very slow piece. The second movement is a very slow piece. So, they were pretty largish chunks of time that were separated out of the score, and, then we would loop those and repeat them and get the tuning correct. So after that piece was done and it came out so successfully, I thought about, hey, maybe we can push this much further. And so that is part of where the 3 movements that we did this weekend came from. So for example, one of the movements has a pretty leapy vocalese, all still in 17-tone equal. It's something like a
melisma, as it were.
Yeah, a very melismatic, leapy passage. And I kind of wrote it, and I thought, I don't think anyone can actually sing this live.
Maybe Jacob can.
Yeah.
That's
pop quiz.
That may or may not. That may or may not be true, but I knew that I certainly wouldn't be able to pull it off myself.
The thing is, yeah, you can put the bar there for yourself. You can challenge yourself to be like, yes, I could learn this thing, and it's true, you could, after a long time, and then you would have just learned that. And as far as getting an entire piece recorded, that would be a slow, tooth-pulling way to do it. And then if you were trying to record takes of it, you'd be smacking yourself over and over again. Mm-hmm. Even if it theoretically can be done, it might not be the best use of your time to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
When you wrote Lost and Found Things 1, 3, and 4, you were still thinking maybe quasi live or not.
I think by the time I was writing that melisma, I was not really concerned about whether it could be done live. I just thought we're going to go in the studio and we're going to break this up into small enough bits that we can actually record it.
You had faith in the method at that point, so you could be free to compose.
I wasn't as concerned with whether it could be done live or not, which, I don't know, in retrospect, maybe I should have been a little bit more concerned about that, because that would have made the recording easier as well, but that's the way it came out.
Yeah.
So in this case, we did break things up in an extreme way where, a melisma of 7 notes, we would record the first 2 notes 20 times, then notes 2 and 3 20 times, and then notes 3 and 4 20 times, with the idea that you could splice these together.
Yeah, I also noticed that in the pieces that you've written with 1, 3, and 4, I don't know if I noticed it in 2, the fact that you're using this method and breaking apart small chunks, it's also idiomatically composed in the sense that you have chunks that can be spread apart in the piece because they're units of repetition. So you give us certain sections that maybe only have a few notes, and then many measures in the future might use those notes, and so you're doubling up, so to speak, so that we don't have to do as much recording time, and you still get enough takes that you can use all of those and spread them around, perhaps, somehow.
Yeah, there were a few examples of that. A lot of times I couldn't do that because maybe the words changed, or the syllable that you were singing on changes or whatever, so we did need to re-record it, but there were some cases where I could reuse material from one part of the piece to another.
As far as what the experience of reading these things in the booth versus what it would be like to attempt this piece live, the 2 main ways that it differed are, so in that thing like the tenor 1 melisma, and insert example here.
Yeah.
The challenge there was it would take me all of half a day, a week long break, rip my hair out a couple of times, and then maybe I could have 1 in 3 lucky times when I got it right. The tuning actually was the difficulty. Decompose that into each interval, like we were just saying. But then the other part of it was, with a crowd like us, tuning slow moving gestures or short fragments that we could have mastered pretty easily. We could have gotten the tuning there by ear. But this is, advanced 21st century music. It's county. There's a lot of, that cognitive load that if you read new music and you're reading counting and rhythms and stuff, you have to deal with. And then you multiply that cognitive load by tuning, and you're in for it. You're going to have a much, much tougher time than you would if it were 12 equal music of similar counting difficulty. So by breaking it down into grooves, and we had bars that are in 17 7/16 that in the recording booth we just pretend are like, you know, a little 8-beat jammable and do it over and over again. So taking the cognitive load out of reading it correctly in its context and no forgiveness for errors and trying to keep up with real time.
If we were reading something in a meter that was difficult or changing, Chris would basically turn it into 4/4 and give us like click cues to come in and things. So I think overall it was pretty intuitive the way that worked and how each little structure just kind of worked itself out. There were a few times where I had to like really remember how many beats we're counting on the click to come in or something like that. But for the most part, I'd say those small structures really worked. I could notice myself getting around agility. Like, what I mean by that is when you have two notes that are maybe like a sixth apart that you're singing, and this happens in Chris's piece a lot, if you sing those and you're pretty accurate, you don't really, if the notes are fast enough, you don't really nail them, I don't think, in any tuning. And doing this thing that Chris does, where he has like, tape, 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 just over and over and over and over and over. Eventually, you start to hear which note you're aiming at a little bit sharp or flat. And so what I would do is, when I would sing it over and over, I would make my bodily movement exactly the same each time so that my voice could exactly hit that note. Because it's actually really, really hard to hit those notes super precisely very fast. So I think I think it's possible to do those leaps live, and you certainly could give the audience the impression that the correct 17-tet intervals are being sung. But in another sense, the way that this was recorded allows those agile passages to be like super accurate in a way that they normally wouldn't be. And Chris also stitched together pairs of notes with syllables in order to tie the distance between gaps. So like if you have like a 7-note passage, you record the first 2 notes and then you talked about, and then like the next 2, and that causes there to be no seam basically in between. You can just overlap everything. So
and that was based on, I experimented with myself just in a few test passages to see how things would work. And that was one thing I realized, is that if you have overlapping segments, that really makes it work.
Yes, absolutely. There is one, I think, really distinct figure that happens in movement 1 that notched up the difficulty quite a bit, at least for me, and that's when we have a triumphant arc of urine. Twice, actually. I guess you could count it as twice. There's a really, really long glissando down that we are stagger breathing for. It's like a minute.
Just to note for the audience, the triumphant arc of urine is actually words from the poem on which the song is based, which is kind of a little kind of humorous sort of piece of text that the song is based on. So I call it the triumphant arc, but it's actually just describing someone, peeing off a
second story
window.
Oh, right, out of a window, yeah.
As we all know the poem, yeah. Exactly.
Excruciating syllable by syllable, we know.
And so I take the image like super seriously, and I actually kind of froze it and slowed it down into this sort of Alvin Lucier like experiment with glissandi and beating and so on. And so that meant like these very long, like there's a glissando that lasts I think over a minute that covers something like a tritone in distance or so.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a whole other challenge is trying to sing that against a guide track. And I don't even know how that's going to come out, to be honest. How I'm going to mix that and so on, but we will see. Because nobody could sing the entire thing in one breath, so everybody had to take kind of sneak breaths, and we'd all try to take them at different times.
And that's all kind of random, and so if you're unlucky, everyone can just line up and breathe at the same time in a particular take. So there's probably a lot of mixing and matching that has to be done. Also, the guide tracks for the glissandi were sawtooth waves, while everything that was just quantized in 17-tone equal temperament was a piano guide track instead. So with the sawtooth wave, I think it's easier to hear when you are not in tune with the track. And I found it extremely difficult to sing along with the glissando and always have my voice exactly with it, with no points where I say to myself, oh, my voice was beating with the track because I started moving too fast or I started moving too slow. My tendency would be to move a little bit too fast because the pitch is moving so slowly. And so then the strategies I used to try and sing it more aptly, one strategy I used was to create a fake meter for myself and just count out a moderate meter and see how far the pitch drops within that amount of time, and then try and estimate that for myself. And another thing I would try and do on the really, really slow moving ones is holding a note and then really not even thinking about descending, but just kind of leaning into what's going on, and then eventually you'll sort of hear it descend a little bit over time. Because if you actually invoke an act of descending at a reasonable speed, you may start doing that, and then you will fall off of the note because it's descending very, very slowly in that minute-long glissando.
Similar experience. Had to use a similar bag of tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different glissandos in that piece, and they're all at different rates.
Mm-hmm.
So every time in the recording session when we would hit a new glissando, everybody be kind of disoriented because they're not used to that speed of glissandoing, and you'd have to kind of reorient yourself to that particular gliss speed.
I had a kind of funny experience when I was singing. There's a part after the glissando moves down and then it's held, so there's a point of 54 or maybe over a minute long of just held note, and I was warbling in and out of it, realizing and just tuning my ear closer and closer in and realizing, wow, I'm really out of tune with this guide track every other moment, but I have this one little moment where I can try to, and it just with this, it's a Lucier moment where it was kind of messing with my head in a funny, interesting way, and where when you reach very close unisons, you get kind of, I don't know, spatial artifacts, or the tone seems to move around, or you start perceiving the beats as rolling forward or rolling backward, or
Yes, absolutely.
Just all these really micro experiences that I got right in that moment.
I felt really similarly, holding on a completely steady tone for a really long time almost makes me self-conscious about how I'm out of tune on that note, and I could find it's so hard to actually control your voice to stay completely still and not even beat a little bit sharp or flat. And the only way I can get it for a sustained amount of time is to actually keep my body completely still, because there's some movement that you have in your body that jiggles you around, and so everything will always be wavy. So it's definitely getting into the realm of singing as straight as you possibly can, which I think maybe sometimes is even outside the normal training of professional singers, even.
Of course.
Depending on what discipline they're in. Oh, so Chris, I gotta ask. No microtonal accidentals in Lost and Found. We only had sharps or flats. What was the
traditional way of notating 17 equal?
Yeah.
I'm not even. I guess I've never really even encountered other ways of doing 17. So, of course, I realize that there's lots of weirdness that comes from just using regular sharps and flats, because you have B flat is lower than A sharp and that sort of thing, and you have minor thirds that look like unisons and that kind of thing. So.
A lot of those intervals were really tricky to read. What I did in my score is I marked the intervals that looked like something but really sounded like something else. So, for example, A flat moving to A sharp is a 17-tone minor third. And I found that there are some leaps that are strange and non-regular that I could never figure out by just reading. But eventually, after a certain amount of time, I get used to the steps. So, I always knew that a chromatic semitone and a neutral second were the same in 17, And so reading that is no problem for me. And then eventually I'd get used to the fact that, like, oh, okay, 2 chromatic semitones in a row is now like a minor third. And so then it wouldn't... I think it felt a lot less scary to read, like, A flat going to A sharp and having it be a minor third than seeing a note go down on the page and hearing it go up, because, like, A sharp goes up to B flat. So I hate the down up thing much more than the big interval thing, personally. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on that too.
Eventually I took to, okay, well, there's 11 takes of this one, and I'm just going to have to listen to the first one to hear it, and then I make a mental map of what I just heard, and I'm not really using notation. I'm using the notation minimally. And I'm mostly going
That's
by
what I
the
sort of
oral
assumed
effects.
people would do, yeah.
I wonder,
Exactly.
I wonder what would happen if you just didn't have notation in this piece. Like, you could almost, the method that you gave us to work with the repeated guide tracks, you almost could do that without it, really. Because you even gave instructions before each one.
During some of the toughest chunks, I still had to use the notated notes pitch as a aid to memory.
Well, you still had to look at the text and the rhythm to some extent.
Yeah.
Between listening to the repeats and kind of intentionally unfocusing my eye, like blurring my way of, like, not trying to be a read the spots off the wall person, just looking at the shape and trying to corroborate the shape with the remembered print. And that was only needed for the toughest chunks. The easier chunks with pure memory based on hearing.
Right, exactly.
There was also, I mean, it's kind of like climbing a mountain in terms of the scope of what we did in just a few hours. But there were these moments of whiplash that I would get where we'd be doing a very small section, like a single stumbled for 26 times. And then I have to read like 2 bars of very strangely chromatic rhythms that are in complex meters. It's like, whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, I always had the head jerk for those moments as well.
And I couldn't see them coming, but by the end I could tell, oh, it's about to get hard.
Chris, I was wondering also if you might want to speak a little bit to the pitch material of these pieces, because I know you were telling us that it came from a tone rose, so I'd love to hear any sort of, ideas about that.
Even when I'm writing music with tone rose, I'm always kind of thinking in some sort of tonal fashion, or maybe not tonal, but I often think of it as fragmentation of the familiar. So just chords that are maybe familiar triads. For example, in the 4th song, there's like an E major chord with a weird neighbor chord. In summer. That alternates with it, and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So there's a lot of like triads and traditional chords, but then they'll be interspersed with like more dissonant passages and so on. So
yeah,
I guess maybe I take like a sort of a Berg-like approach to serialism, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to just think about just a way of fragmenting familiar stuff in interesting ways.
Yeah, that is very like Berg-like. Would that also qualify in the sense that you spread the tone row out over the notes, like across all 4 staves, or is it more horizontal?
I think that depends on the piece and sort of what comes to mind. There's also a lot of like actually minimalist techniques in the pieces, like additive processes where this is especially obvious in the 3rd song with Consider This, gradually building those phrases up. I kind of have my own little minimalist process, which is similar to additive, but for example, it'll go like A, B, C, D, B, C, D, E, C, D, E, F, D, E, F, G. So kind of you get a lot of repetition, but each time you repeat, you add something to the end and you take something away from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I use that technique to some extent in these pieces as well.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the neighbor chord that Chris mentions in movement 4 is technically a major chord without its 5th and with an added 9th that has a neutral 7th in it. And in the music, it's spelled A sharp, E flat, A, D flat. And I'm thinking there are different ways to spell it, right? So
Not really.
yes. So if we were on A sharp, we could spell it A sharp, C double sharp, G sesquisharp, B sharp. And then if we were starting on B half flat, we could spell it B half flat, D half sharp, A, C half sharp. And if we were starting on C flat, we could spell it C flat, E flat. Yay, E flat gets to stay the same. B sesquiflat, and then D flat. So I guess it all depends on which one we think is closest. And two of them have those sesquiflats in it. I try to avoid sesquiflats in 17-tone equal temperament. Same reason I try to avoid double flats, because it's like the chromatic semitone just covers so much ground that like it can get really confusing really fast if you use accidentals that far out. Which I think isn't as true of like tunings like 19 or 33 or 26 or anything like that. So
Can I lob a whole grenade into your podcast?
please do.
So the 17-tone traditional way of spelling things, it's driven primarily by the needs of composers and also of technology. There was a reason why 17 had a lovely moment in sort of the early mid computer era, because you could trick, basic notation softwares into creating what you needed.
Yes.
It serves the needs of composers. And look, as a composer and an analyst, you can get used to it pretty quickly. It's actually quite nice. As a performer, it's bound to mislead you, as is pretty much most other microtonal systems. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I have this awful fantasy, what little reputation I may possess in the Zen harmonic community is like for the ergonomic radical. So, what if, whether it's sagittal or sense or whatever system works for the composer or the analyst or the mad genius who's putting this whole project together, and there's almost like a tap on, tap off. The performer, if they're pretty versed, can like tap on more context or more advanced ways of looking at it. But it's almost like what I need is just sharps and flats and little sharps if it's only a little bit, and big sharps. And like, so this is just an automated layer that you drop on for somebody that is trying to skate by on as little special microtonal preparation as possible.
Right.
To minimize the amount of misleading that's going on. It's a crazy, stupid idea, but...
Like sharp and a flat, and then you just change the size of the sharp and the flat.
Yeah.
Big old sharp.
That's fascinating. It's one of those absolute versus relative kind of things, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the debate that people are having around music notation and piano rolls, where if you're reading piano roll music, you get to see relative sizes really easily, but you don't get any absolute mathematical differences, and so that could also mislead you. So there's these interesting trade-offs that have to happen in all of these situations for sure. I also know, so with the sharps and the flats thing, Chris, you were like editing them in a certain way too, right? Where you were able to use them in your notation software in Piano Text somehow?
Well, with these pieces, when I made MIDI demo tracks, I was thinking of how we did the 17-tone piano project, where you divide the 17 tones into two different pianos with, I guess, 5 shared tones, right?
No, the seven
shared
tones? The naturals.
Right, I always confused 19 and 17.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be 7 shared tones and 5 tones that are different on each piano. And that's how I was thinking about realizing it.
I was wondering if using just sharps and flats helped you in editing guide tracks or anything about the piece.
It does give you a consistency, so if you're writing anything that has like a tonality to it, then it starts to make a lot more sense, because,
right.
C major triad looks like a C major triad.
Yeah.
I guess in my music it makes less sense, because you'll have a C major triad and then you'll have an A sharp major triad, and how are you going to spell that? Are you going to...
Yep.
I mean,
what's
the right way to spell that? Like a C double sharp F, A sharp, C double sharp, E sharp. I mean, I probably would just use the D flat, but then you have all these problems that can
really
be annoying.
Just one problem, which is a person like Stephen who doesn't want to see it that way. And like, you can say, there's like as many different ways of solving notation as there are people, but there really are fewer than that. There's
Yeah.
we group together that way.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because I wrote a 22 Edo string trio, and I was asking about the notation on Facebook. And there, I was really trying to be consistent about tonalities, but it would wind me up in weird situations with like E up, or
Oh, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
F sharp up, or something like that.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
And I remember Steven complaining about that. He's like, no, just use everybody, Steven, Juhani, all the people who were
I
commenting
remember
on
this.
it were advising me to just use the simpler accidental, even though it's not tonally intuitive or doesn't look harmonic. If it's a D sharp major triad, it doesn't look like a D sharp major triad. But
Jacob and I were just talking about this notational issue in the car. You may be touching on the issue of less arrows versus correct spelling. Like if you have a B down, like as a note in 22 tone equal temperament. Sorry, I was switching tuning systems on you here from 17. Like if you have like B down as a note in 22 tone equal temperament, and then you get a major third from that, if you spell that as a major third and then go down again, like you'd spell it as B down and then D sharp double down, right? Because you would have D sharp down if it was Pythagorean, and then you add another down. But D sharp double down is the same as D up.
right.
So then if you have the possibility of a D up and a D sharp double down in like a music notation program, the music notation program may not know which one to choose. And so it's easier to just have one. But that kind of trick I think only works in like equal temperament, really. So, Thomas's comment about sizes of sharps and flats made me think of how cent deviation notation, sometimes I've heard that like if you have that in your score, it can cause misestimation. Like just due to the way we quantize numbers. Like if you write some pitch and it has plus 52 cents, if you weren't careful, if you're estimating 50 cents normally as an in-between point, estimating 52 might cause someone to be like, I have to be 2 cents higher. But 2 cents is so hard to hear that they might be just quite a bit higher than that, and it might venture around 60 or 65 or 70 or, whatever. So,
Every system has so much to get used to about it, and the bottom line is like it's all about what is meeting your needs heuristically and on the fly. And in a process like we were using, it's all about the only time you really need to rely on more specific pitch information than shaped like that is in those trickier figures, which are still going to be maybe 10 to 12 notes long at maximum. So the same solution never works twice. It's incredibly irritating.
I can't remember what you call this. The ratio of work input to work output.
Yes. If you don't mind, I actually wanted to...
Yes, go ahead.
Start with some stipulations, which are one, we have not heard the result yet. I can't wait. I'm really like on tenterhooks to hear the result, but I know it's in for a while. The one who has to bear most of that burden is our lovely composer and editor, Chris. So until we've heard, we really have no idea how this went. I hope it went reasonably well, but until we heard, we know nothing. However, I'm curious for the round robin for the 3 people that performed.
Yes.
As bringing yourself, bringing the musician, bringing the person who has a busy life and is trying to decide what projects to support and how to support them, and the extent to which you feel like you want to feel, or you feel well used, and you feel like you made a worthy contribution. How did you feel as a musician? What kind of musician mood did you bring into that experience?
I was down to clown from day one. The music... I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I'm excited for the harmony. And I think the way that it was recorded made me reframe my expectations about how guide tracks work a little bit. For those of you who don't know, I make a lot of my own arrangements in crazy equal temperaments. And sometimes I use guide tracks for those. Most of the time I do. But I had not been using the idea of putting things into snippets. So I think I may be using more of that in the future if I want, like, say, certain sections to be hyper accurate, or I want to focus on some other quality of the singing that needs refinement. But yeah, I think this work like really challenged me in a way that I hadn't expected, and I'm really glad that I got to participate. And I'm totally down to sing in a room for a really long time for hours, because that's usually what I'm doing with my arrangements anyway. So it's like, it kind of felt like the same thing that I usually do, but
This time with pals in separate
Yeah.
rooms doing the same thing at
Yeah.
the same time.
exactly. Since someone else was in charge, it was kind of liberating actually
Oh, yeah.
to not be in charge of the final product. So
It was really nice to kind of just sit in the comfort of these well curated guide tracks that say tenor 2, measure 82,
Oh.
beat
Part of it
2
was
to.
just...
It was
Yes.
just really well
That's great.
prepared.
yeah,
I would say I was not bored. Like I felt led along like a journey, like I was saying, the mountain climbing. Like it felt like a challenge from the beginning to the end. I felt really humbled, not only just from a the recording standpoint of do 10 takes and you think that they're all garbage, and
I know that feeling. Yeah,
but also just experiencing the amazing musicianship and uniqueness of Stephen and Thomas, and the times that we were able to hear us together. And it's like, okay, we're good. Like,
We're kind of a cool team. We
Yeah.
round out each other's strengths and weaknesses kind of unexpectedly
we
well.
got a good sound.
I think that's good too. Yeah,
Like, and I was playing with, in the booth, like, okay, my ego, like I'm the best one here. I got to really nail this. I'm the leader. I'm the section
I gotta
leader.
carry this.
These clowns. Oh man,
you said that in your
this
face.
low F
voice.
sharp. Oh
Mr.
no.
Buckman.
I'm definitely nailing this one. I can't tell what Steven's doing over there, but I sure. Oh man. And then I'm just thinking like, and then in the breaks, Thomas broke out this card game, the Mind, which
Please
is
sponsor us, The Mind.
interesting.
We've got a podcast for you.
It's one
It's
of
really
those
cool.
games where you have to all work together. You're not playing against each other, but you have to win. And then so I'm brought back to this like, oh yeah, music. It's a collaborative endeavor. We all have to pitch in to win. And like,
Yeah,
so just humbled and teamified.
primal adventure for sure.
Yeah, and it was really just two full days in the recording studio for what's going to be how many minutes of music? Let's see, like, what would you say, Chris?
8, 9.
10 or 15.
Yeah, 10 or
Okay,
15.
cool.
10 or 15 minutes of music. How many
Yeah.
hours of studio time that we put in?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't
So
know.
I feel like my time was well spent. I mean,
Yeah, me too. Yeah, absolutely.
So, my thoughts on the experience. I mean, I can't help but look at it like a job. I mean, and my profession is human factors engineering. I look at the relationship between designs and people at work. As to echo, Chris did an amazing job with how well prepared the guide tracks were, and there was a little bit of there's so many good things to say about it. One of the ways I could phrase the bad thing is that something like you keep going to mountain climbing Mount Everest with a professional team and a Sherpa, you still have to get your ass up Mount Everest. It's not easy going. But most of the actual hard work of climbing Everest, having a plausible plan, knowing when it's not a good idea to keep going and turning around, as well as what supplies you're going to need and what your turnaround point is and all this stuff is handled by somebody else.
Yes.
You are just a tourist coming
Yeah.
up Mount Everest who has to be fit enough to carry yourself up, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And I know that some musicians who, because this is the juncture that I'm at these days. I'm sliding my way out of music as I have another life that's gradually taking over. I still love music a lot, and I'm thrilled for the chance to participate in a project. But I know that I no longer have the chops to keep up in, like a conservatory-esque, yes, we're going to give you this score 3 weeks in advance, and then you're going to show up at rehearsal, and we're going to expect you to already read the spots off the wall of it.
Yeah.
I would never survive that anymore.
Mhm.
And I was never all that good at it, even in the moment. I could cling on by the tips of my fingers, and it's now gone for me. So for me, it's kind of amazing to realize that I still have to step up and bring considerable skill to this, despite being so well shepherded. And it really met me where I was. But I can't help but think that somebody who, takes more delight in doing their job their way and bringing their entire personality to it and all their skills to it would be like, oh, why are you taking control of me so much? Why don't you just let me do it how I want to do it?
I see, yeah.
and this is a large burden on Chris. This is something that I've harped about on maybe another episode of the overloading of the composer role, especially within microtonalism. Now you've got to be your own mixer, producer, guide track preparer, and just all these other things.
Great,
Do you feel,
Chris question.
yeah, like overburdened by that, or is just like it's part of the process and it's what?
Yeah, well, it's just I wish I could get things done faster, but I don't so much mind the work as just the fact that it takes so long to get anything done.
Do you like having all the strings in your fingers, or do you wish that you could delegate more of the decision making and action?
It would be nice to be able to delegate, I guess. Actually, one of the reasons I made the guide tracks so explicit, and I have, I talk through the instructions and everything, because I think we were originally intending to do, or I thought we could do this remotely, and that you guys could record them
That's right.
separately, and you would just listen along to the guide track and sing along in your room or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, we all have busy lives, so I realized at a certain point that we just need to get together and burn through this.
Yeah.
It was necessary.
Which now
That was really helpful.
now that
yeah.
we've done it, I'm like, there's no way we could have done this like separately,
And with the separate thing, the main hurdle in my mind with us recording it separately would be organization. Because you and your cousin, who were in the control room, had this session, right? And you had all the guide tracks lined up and everything was being sent out and we were singing at the same time. So there was also, I think, coordination where, like, if you're singing along to a guide track and you have no one else to sing along with, you don't get that ensemble expressivity.
Yep.
But there were times where we would listen to the guide track and we would purposely want to hear each other in each other's ears as we heard the guide track as well with certain levels.
Yeah.
And parts where we purposely didn't want to hear other people. And I actually also was employing a trick where if I couldn't hear, if my pitches were dead on, I would take my headphone off of one ear to hear myself more and then to hear everything else less. And that really helped me with certain notes that were super tricky.
It was cool to have so much of all that sort of control, the levels of the click. The composer there to whisper advice in our ears right in the second, like sometimes between two repeats.
Yes.
Man, it's a really unique way of going about this. One that, in all my musical education, like, it's only the necessity, the extreme cognitive loads of performing this enharmonic stuff
Yeah.
that leads to this method innovation. And the main thing I'm walking away from this is to realize that method innovation of this type in this school, maybe with more tech help, maybe with more people that are used to it, whatever it takes, could solve other problems besides enharmonics too. Like, you can have this entire extended creative performance practice that would enable you to play other kinds of cognitively or logistically impossible music.
Yeah.
All from a central switchboard, keeping the roles of your delegates challenging and keeping their individual artistic contributions relevant is a big challenge. But I can't believe that in 5 years of, conservatory-ish musical education, I never had an experience like that. Like something to realize you could do this in a pretty drastically different way.
I've never, worked in commercial music really, but I believe that, they're not doing like experimental things and they're always trying to do things as quickly as possible because there's money involved. But I think they do go pretty crazy with guide tracks and that sort of thing. Like there are, like, it surprised me to hear that like gospel choirs, which have a lot of tempo, expressivity, and rubato and that sort of thing, that will all be like guide tracked and click tracks and like very carefully done so that it's extremely obvious to whoever's performing, like when you're slowing down and how you're slowing down and so on, like right in the moment. So you don't even have to think about it. Like it just feels completely natural. So I think there is something of a tradition of that in the professional music world, but I guess the purpose is different. Our purpose is making weird stuff happen that hasn't happened before. But
And also you wrote the ranges of the parts so that we could all sing them within our ranges. So I also wonder what you might have done if you had like a very low bass or a really high.
Yeah, my rule was like if I can't sing it, or I should be able to sing everything in the piece.
Right.
Although that wasn't strictly true. I couldn't hit some of those lowest notes, the F sharp and the F and so on. But
right, yeah.
But vast majority of it I could sing myself.
Yeah.
both in terms of the rhythm and the actual pitches and so on. So
Yeah, it's also worth noting that my voice is not very bassy. And what we did do to get those bass notes really strong was we recorded movement 1 first within the first day of recording, and we finished that. And then in the second day of recording, we finished movement 3 and movement 4. So when we were recording movement 3, there are some sections that have F sharps and Fs a lot. That 17 tone F sharps and Fs, of course, so the 17 tone F sharp is sounding a little bit G-like. In fact, very G-like in my mind, which wants to be flat a lot. So, in that sense, it's like we started and then we hit the bass parts first, and that was a really interesting experience for me too, because I do the exact same thing when I'm making my arrangements. If I want to sing low notes, I'll purposely get a lot of sleep and record early and not use up like any of my bass voice, so that I have as many clear low notes as possible before tension takes over throughout the day or whatever. And so then, I mean, I felt so good that when we were singing, I was able to keep singing a repeated figure on like some high note and then F sharp, and like singing it over and over, and I didn't feel my F sharp like wear away. But I think if you, Chris, if you had written that a major second or a minor third lower, I probably would have only done those parts like twice or 3 times, so that I would keep having that note for later, because like I wouldn't want to like lose it. Yeah.
I like to just assume that if there's an objective, clearly voiced guide track in my ear, I will know I'm in tune or not. I think there are moments, given the contour or given something going on in my skull or my voice, that I am misled. And I'm curious how many of those you're going to find. Because I know that I can remember some times when I felt like I was a little egregious, but there were none of the loops that I feel like I didn't get at least one solid take in. And I'm curious if you're ever going to have a moment where we're all pretty confident and think we're in tune and we just did this. Like, if you're going to find anything like that.
Maybe the fast parts.
Just these neutral thirds, and we're just singing them and then singing. That one effect, because there'll be like 11, 12 takes, and then we'll sing one after, and we get to hear ourselves without the guide track. And that was that kept happening.
Oh, that was interesting.
I hear myself after, I'm very confident, and then I'm like, wait, that was me without the guide track?
Those usually, those usually made me feel better.
They did.
That's good. Yeah.
I think that I was mentioning this yesterday, that sometimes with microtonal tunings, you might have something that you're aiming for as a composer, and you present it to humans, and they render it in a certain way, and there are certain things that you ask for, and they're just going to be rendered a little bit differently than what you were imagining, just due to like what feels natural to the voice and so on. And at that point, I'm willing to say, like, if everybody's doing that and it sounds good, then that's fine, even if it's not like, even if it's off by 10 cents from 17 Edo.
Hand over your composer card. I'm going to cut it up, because that's not a control freak thing to say.
Yeah.
10 cents off. Oh, God forbid.
No, there's definitely a divergence in the performance of acoustic music on instruments and voices.
Well, another thought I had was like, let's say I write a piece in 17, like if you write a piece in 12 Edo, like for choir, a cappella, and there's a C major triad, it'd be totally reasonable for a choir to, sing the E, even 15 cents lower, so it's like a just tuning. So why isn't that the case in some other equal temperament, like 17, right?
Yeah.
Is an E major triad. Why do you have to sing the G sharp like way off the way it is in
right?
17?
And there's not enough of like a sample size of like, okay, this many things written over hundreds of years by 17-tone composers to establish what those saddle points
I mean,
are.
It sort of depends on, I guess, what your goal is. If you're really trying to explore the sound of the kind of grading 17 Edo triad, then that's one thing. But
absolutely, yeah.
But like in that fourth song, I think of that E major. I'd be perfectly happy for that E major triad to be in tune, and then you have this weird neighbor chord
that's fascinating.
That comes out of 17.
I didn't think that was where your head was at, but I love that is where it's at.
I think it could be there. It's if that is how like the performers end up performing it, I wouldn't complain necessarily.
My composing days are long in my past, but I remember when I was doing the 17-tone piano project stuff, I was exactly like that. I liked to find contrasts and alternate between consonant or mock traditional material and crazy stuff that the system could do. And with real humans, I would have been very happy for them to just ear tune the parts that were not meant to be like exploring the thorny edges of the tuning system. And there's no way to really do that with guide tracks. But and with microtonality, it's even harder without guide tracks. Like the whole mindset you have to adopt is
Right.
Well, yeah, but one of the things I was thinking is even if you're singing with a guide track, there are some places where you guys might be off, but you're all off by the same amount, and no matter how hard we try, you're always doing that because that's just what feels natural.
Human instinct.
And at that point, I'm kind of accept it. I'm just kind of like, okay, that's what you're gonna do. It doesn't sound bad because you're all doing the same thing.
Seem to agree on something here.
You can sing the same like implied pitch class with different exaggeration, different brightness, different ways, pointing in a different direction, and you get different vibes from it. We actually had the chance to, by the way, perform. Well, we sung Movement 4 together in the studio after we were done.
fluid, I would say.
Yeah, we were done recording, and we had a little bit of extra time, so we were like, let's try singing this with the guide tracks in our ears, but we also have the music in front of us, and we're singing it like all together at the same time, and we're singing one to a part instead of recording each of the notes just piece by piece. And that was a really interesting experience too. We discovered a lot, I think, about the harmony that we hadn't discovered before. For instance, there's a very interesting sonority in 4 where there's like a G flat.
The tracks were a string drawn tight round the earth.
Flat, and then there's a cluster stacked up from it that has 2 neutral seconds. So a G flat, a G, and a G sharp, and then an A on top. So the G flat and an A are a neutral third, and you have those 2 neutral seconds in there, and then a neutral third on top of that. So they stack, and the neutral third are a minor second away from each other. So we had to kind of figure out that stuff. And like in that part, there's like a polyrhythm, so it also made it harder. And when we were singing like the E chord earlier that Chris mentioned, I think we were kind of locking in and getting it to sound more like either just major third or a 12-tone equal temperament major third too. So there's definitely lots to discover through ensemble singing as well. I almost get this feeling that like the way we sang this with the guide tracks and put it together, like I don't know as much about the piece as I should. Like I don't understand its harmonic narrative in its entirety in the same way I would have to if like I was doing something with a group and we were all like playing it.
I'm eager to find out and at least slightly anxious. It always feels important to me in singing any kind of highly harmonic vocal music that I understand my role in that harmony. Maybe it's the oldest way of thinking, but whatever you say. Like, I have faith that it's going to turn out fine, but there is that worry that I don't understand how these chords are really supposed to clash or mesh at all, and I might be playing my role wrong, and I won't find out about that till it's all mixed together in a few months.
Right, yeah. Because that's the thing that I was sort of hinting at earlier that we were talking about is like that if you have some kind of role in harmony, you could intonate slightly differently according to that role if you're conscious of it. Like if you have a major third, you're tuning a certain way, that kind of thing.
Yep.
We also got to listen to pieces of it in the studio a little bit as well, sort of in between sessions, and I was pretty impressed with what I was hearing in general. I think there were some parts where if it was faster and we ended on like kind of a weird unfamiliar pitch, it was easier for us to spread apart a little bit, generally on later notes more than beginning notes. And then there were some passages where we just like really nailed it. Like, I don't remember, I want to say it's at the end of Movement 3, but there's like this little, like that little part right there, you know, at the end is like, stumbled or something. And we were singing that like the first 5 times were like
She always stumbled over.
It's a shorter phrase than that.
A little tag line at the end, right?
It's like G flat, E flat, and E in a row.
G flat, E flat, E.
Yeah, just at the end. Yeah, and when we were singing that, I heard it in the studio, and we nailed like the first 5, and then on the 6th one we practically nailed it, and then on the last note at the end someone was only slightly off, and I was like, wow, that's really impressive. So not all of them are that impressive, but I'm sure there are a lot of them that like are that clean and just right in. That was where I wanted those glissandos, and that's just something I only got, I think, 1 or 2. It's quite hard to get it. But I consider that a pretty good success rate, because when I was practicing this at home, the main thing I was practicing was basically just the glissandos. Because they're so much harder than the other stuff. So I would say I got them maybe like 4 times or something at home. And so to get them 2 times in the studio, I think is a pretty high like percentage rate. But the long ones are really hard. But when we hear us all together, it's not obvious where exactly like the imagined saw glissando would be. So I think it still works with all of us singing together and descending at roughly the same rate. Like we sound like our mind is in the same place, at least on that really long one. So I wonder if that effect will persist on shorter glissandos, where we have the potential to be more off in a shorter amount of time. Because with the long one, it's like we've got to be basically on the note, or we're just not like singing the right thing, basically. So, Chris, were you listening to almost every take like back in the studio a little bit, like right after each guide track, or were you pausing a little bit in between, or were you just listening as it's happening?
Mostly listening as it's happening. Sometimes we, check to make sure nobody was distorting, or that we couldn't hear the clicks or that kind of thing. But
right, exactly.
Yeah, mostly we didn't want to take too much time, because there's just so much to get through. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, and the tests we did, generally sounded pretty decent. So
yeah, for sure. Oh, so you said that you wrote 2 and then like 1, 3, and 4. Is there a chance that we'll have any other movements of Lost and Found Things in the future? Will we have Lost and Found Things 5? What will it be?
Well, Lost and Found Things is based on 4 poems.
That's right.
And I've used those up. So I guess the question is, will I write another choral microtonal piece? I've been thinking about something maybe in 31, based on this Mallarmé prose poem that my grandfather translated, so I might set that translation somehow. I've also been thinking of experimenting with like some kind of like AI voice or something like that, just to see what I could get out of that. I don't know whether I'll do anything quite like Lost and Found Things again, because it just seems like an insane amount of work. And
yeah,
I feel like there are composers who do that, even the composers who do that amount of work, like at a certain point they're just like, I can't do this anymore, and then they start, I don't know, thinking maybe more practically, or actually including, when you sit down to write a piece, in what you include in your compositional constraints, the fact that you don't want to spend 6 years getting to an end product.
I should hope not.
I don't know. Is Lost and Found Things? That's more than
When
6.
did you
right?
write
Is
Lost and Found Things?
Wow.
Confess.
Well, I mean,
A very long time.
I haven't, spent all my time on that piece, and so I'm exaggerating a bit, but
It's definitely a pretty special one. Which,
I mean, I expect it to take at least 6 months to mix all this stuff, if not a year, so.
oh yeah, you've got a lot to do.
Do the
with
short
editing
movement
them.
first. We want to hear it.
Yeah, I will probably do that.
What if you had to rank the movements in order from most performable to least? What would you give it?
I mean, I would say 2 and 4 are the most performable,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe 1, even though it has the glissandos. I'm not sure how they would be handled live, to be honest.
You'd have to have a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
And these tend to be kind of small affairs, I think, in the microtonal community, just because of the highly specialized nature of the work.
You had 8 people doing the second one live, right,
Yes.
Jacob? Yeah.
2 on a part. Soprano, alto, tenor, bass. I
Yeah.
think.
Spicy.
I wonder if 8 could handle those big glissandos, 8 people.
You'd have to plan it out, I think.
Yeah,
If you
like,
have a 60-second long glissando, you'd have to literally say, okay, you take the first 20 seconds, I'll start at second 15 and go on to 30, and you start at second 25 and go on to...
and you could maybe like use the timer on stage. I've performed in several pieces that do that, so that would
Or just build it
be
into
the question.
Have 8 guide tracks and just build it right into those.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, because number 3 has that crazy melisma stuff, which I still think is, like, pretty hard for... Although, I don't know, I mean, I kind of was basing it on what my own voice can do, and I definitely can't do that. But then, you know, professional singers have so much control, they can do some pretty amazing stuff.
I know I can wrap my imagination around pretty weird figures like that, but to me the key is I'm not a very disciplined person. I can't do it by applying myself. I can only do it by having a track that I relished listening to. A MIDI won't do it, but you know, I have from memory almost all my favorite lines, no matter how hard they are, in like the Chrysalid Requiem, just because I've listened to it 20 times.
Yes.
So I know my imagination can do it if sufficiently motivated.
Right. Absolutely. How about you, Jacob? How do you feel about that?
I want to write music that people can imagine because they like it that much.
Yeah.
Though there still is the problem of making a listenable enough recording in the first place before one even exists.
Right.
So you still need a trick. That's been my thing for the my little albatross around my neck for the last 5 years playing this game.
Yeah.
Or not playing it, as the case may be.
Yeah. You know what I think is kind of crazy about composing is like I definitely feel like playing pieces live is just like so special that I'm almost willing to write something that's not as boundary breaking, like just to have the experience of people playing or singing something together like in the same room. So it was interesting that this project got to feel that way, but without actually performing. And we still have the recorded piece when it's all said and done. So, Chris, where are we gonna find Lost and Found Things when it's all done?
Well, I'll probably put it on, you know, the usual places, YouTube. I think I may work it into an album of vocal music, some of which may be microtonal, some not.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
but I'll probably put a score follower video on YouTube, and I may have the 4th song up, I don't know, within a month or 2, so
Yeah.
that could be fun.
Love a good score follower.
Amazing. Maybe Score Follower will actually post it. We know you can hear this, Dan. But yeah. Well, thanks for hopping on this interview, gang. It's been a pleasure discussing this with you, gentlemen. And
Too right.
hopefully I'll see you around soon.
I hope so.
All right. Bye-bye. Our second conversation here is between Chris and myself, after the release of Lost and Found Things in its entirety on YouTube. We discuss mixing, the tone rows used in the composition, prosody in the poetry, and other challenges.
For those who might need a refresher, the basic method is I have guide tracks that the singers sing along with, and typically we'll take a phrase in one part, you know, the alto, the tenor, the soprano, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll take a phrase for that one part. In the guide track, I'll repeat that phrase 20 times or something. So you sing along with it 20 times. You get used to the tuning as you do that. So like maybe the last 4 or 5 takes,
Right.
pretty good. And then you can layer those on top of each other for chorusing effect.
Right.
And so that's how we did the second movement back in 2007 or so. And I guess what was different with the other 3 movements, I sort of like, all right, well, I have a proof of concept that worked pretty well. Let's see what other crazy stuff we could do. So there's a lot of, and again, that piece was pretty slow and contemplative, but the pieces we've done recently in the last 5 years, there's a lot of like fast action as well as some slow stuff as well, but a lot of kind of fast action stuff. And so that kind of presented some new challenges, still using that basic methodology, but when you have very rapid vocal stuff, I had to kind of think about how to do that, and I sort of with it on my own to figure out a way that would work.
Does that mean that when you recorded Movement 2, because it was slow and contemplative, you purposely did it first because you were more familiar with the methodologies you wanted for an easier recording session?
Well, actually, compositionally, so this is video, right? So I can share screen or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So, and these are some like sketches that we can get into. So here's the score of the first song. So, oh, I know what I was going to show. It's kind of the compositional history of the piece. So,
Yeah.
it's a long, long time ago when I was like in high school. I was at this music camp called BUTI, Boston University Tanglewood Institute, which is for like high school students, and they have like a composer program. So I went to that, and there was a trombonist there whose name was John Monroe, and he was also a poet. And we kind of became friends, and he would send me poems that he had written. For like the next 10 years, he would just send me like poems that he was writing. And this was great because when I was an undergrad, everyone was like trying to set E.E. Cummings, and they were always like telling me these sob stories about how they would, write a letter to the E.E. Cummings Foundation and say, "Can I use E.E. Cummings' poem for my song cycle that's never going to make a single cent of money?" And then E.E. Cummings would be like, "Sure, if you pay us $10,000 or something like that." And there were all these horror stories about trying to get copyrights and so on. So anyway, I had this friend writing poems, and he was just like, "Use my poems." So,
Amazing.
and he always had these like, I really liked his poetry because, and this is where I'll show you kind of, this is the original like sheets of paper that he sent me in the snail mail. This was like really in the old days.
Oh, I saw this
People like,
during the recording
you know,
session.
yeah. So he would actually send me letters with poems and stuff. So I have like a whole collection of them, many of which I have set to music in various capacities. But anyway, for some reason at first, this second poem here, the which begins "We breathe ourselves," I really liked his poems because the lines are short, and I feel like that kind of leaves space for music. Whereas, I don't know, he also sent me once in a while he would send me another poet's work. Like he sent me Gerard Manley Hopkins, which had
Oh, no
like
way.
really long lines. And I was like,
Yeah.
I would feel like that would be more difficult to set. It's kind of like I think The Rite of Spring isn't a great dance piece because the music is so awesome that there's just no room for the dance.
Right.
But anyway, that's probably a controversial opinion. But
Very
anyway,
good.
so I
That's
liked his
exactly what we
poems.
want.
I liked his poems, and so began by just setting this one. And I didn't even necessarily plan to set the other poems, but this was the first piece, which was known for a long time just as Lost and Found Things, which is really the name of the whole cycle. So, from about 2007 to 2019, this was all that existed. Yeah, so that song is now the second movement of the cycle, but that's where I started. And then around 2019, I was like, well, I might as well go and set the rest of these poems. In particular, this first one, if you read the lyrics, this is one of those poems where I don't know, I heard this story once about a pretty well-known composer who was doing an opera, and her librettist sent her the lyrics, and it was like the lyrics was like doing laundry, doing laundry, or something like that. It was just like very repetitive. And then the composer was like, I'm not setting this. This is ridiculous. And I thought, like, I don't know, like, would I do that, or would I just be like, I can do this. I can figure something out. So it was kind of like that with this first song where, it's basically talking about I guess, a frat boy taking a piss. So it's just kind of gross. But
Right.
I think what his intention was is to like take a very mundane or even disgusting image and somehow turn it into this beautiful image. And
Right.
so I kind of took that idea very seriously in the piece. And that's why at the beginning of the first movement, you get these glissandos. And then, especially in the middle of the piece, you get these very long descending glissandos, which It's like you're suddenly zapped into this Alvin Lucier world where like things are slowly glistening and producing like interesting beat patterns and all that kind of thing. And then it kind of zaps out of that and it becomes this like kind of fun, funky, rhythmic choral piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I talked about, the first poem kind of how it works. So you have these very long sections with glissandos, and then the rest of it's like kind of almost just a lot of rhythmic play. It's kind of like a post Stravinsky, a little bit, maybe little bit of minimalism kind of thing in there.
Yeah.
Um, and especially like this, like a ticker tape streamer, when that comes back in this section here, you get these this kind of canon effect where that particular lick happens in all the voices.
Like a ticker, like a dreamer, like a dreamer. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes. Yeah, yes, yeah, yes. Like a dreamer, like a ticker, like a dreamer, 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 like a dreamer.
I knew that was going to be especially challenging to sing.
Right.
So we broke that up into like little tiny two-syllable bits that we then strung together, and that seemed to work pretty well. But
Yeah. Quite the method.
yeah, but I think it made a nice like effective like this like weird otherworldly kind of canonic texture and stuff.
It's so rhythmic, and the melodic arc of it is so strange because of all the Zen harmonic intervals. I'd be very interested in notating some of this using half sharps and flats in order to see some of the intervals in a really adept way, but you'd have to make lots of compromises in this kind of music that wouldn't allow you to spell things very neatly. And I also think that, I mean, the thing that strikes me about these pieces when it comes to setting the text, one of the many things, is that it's very prosodic, and the effects that those words have, I think, maybe even have an impact on the textures. It's like this, like good tape is very like rhythmic and consonants, happening there. Like it's so that really makes this metronomic thing work out, and it makes sense.
Yeah, and then later these kind of unison, or I should say homophonic things where it's kind of alternating between different like weird Zen harmonic chords and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like I play these little like fun little rhythmic games with is his, and so on.
Yeah.
That was a good time.
There's a lot of freedom with the text. Is part of that in your composition due to the shortness of the poems, or your willingness to play with the structure of what's going on? I mean, maybe it's kind of both as well.
I think so. Yeah, it's just trying to stretch out the textual material and approach it from different directions. So these three lines here from yes, this drunken night is occurring, yes, a lonely boy is dropping his pants, like that's set in like all different kinds of ways
Right.
through the whole section. So yeah, just trying to like get as much as I can out of that textual material. And then I do like to save things, so like the last line, accurately mark the snow, only happens once and is kind of, very slowly articulated. And I think, and actually that's true of the first two lines of the poem as well. When the first words come in, it basically slowly makes its way through those first two lines. A boy is pissing out of a second-story window.
Right.
Accurately mark the snow.
And then, of course, the your and arc. The arc is really this whole section, this is a This is like 2/3 of the piece, this line right here,
Yeah, for those of you who can't
in terms of the
see,
duration.
the BPM is very slow, and there are very long measures, like 12 beats per minute, 9 beats per minute, 24 beats per minute, and Chris is also given the approximate number of seconds for each piece of the glissando: 40 seconds, 54 seconds, 17 seconds for various sections. So it's quite long.
Yeah. So that's like 5 minutes for all this stuff, and then all the rest of the piece, which is like 10 pages, take up about, I don't know, 2 minutes or something. It
That's
goes.
so hilariously disproportionate.
Yeah. And I like doing that kind of thing where things are, yeah, kind of just like almost purposely out of whack like that in
Right.
terms of time and
You're like subverting the nature of what we would expect the form to be based
yeah.
on what we see written. I wonder, with the Urine's arc in movement one here, that's, I assume, what we'll call it down the road when historians look back. Uh, do you consider that to be the climactic moment of the piece, or like the theme moment? I don't know if you've heard of that, or
You
maybe the
you mean
rhythmic moment.
the that glissando section?
Yeah,
I kind of think of it as the piece. I kind of think of it as the piece is the rhythmic and more fast-moving stuff, but there's a couple moments where I just suspend time for like 5 minutes.
right. Okay,
So I don't know if I don't think I would think of that as a climax, but just like me just playing with time basically
I see.
in like a weird way.
So this piece, I don't think really maybe has a particular moment like that. It's more developing its own gestures as they occur, and sort of, you get to hear that unfold. It's very
Yeah.
like Consider This as well. And I love that you have the text video on YouTube.
Consider this.
Oh yeah, I thought that would be a fun way of presenting it too.
Yeah, that was great. It's so interactive that way. It's just as interactive and awesome and helpful as a score, but you don't need to be a musician to understand the appeal.
Exactly, yeah. I think actually, if you're talking about climax, like I would say the end is the climax of the piece, if there is a climax. Like
Yeah,
everything kind of leads up to that final, and it all there's kind of this Bartokian symmetrical wedge thing where it all comes resolves on this central D.
right.
So I would say
Yes.
that's like the climax of the regular music-y part of the piece. But meanwhile, there's this like out of time stuff that just comes out of nowhere, is
Right.
there for a few minutes, and then like goes away.
Fascinating. The text painting is really well done, even though it's not direct, because it's kind of like the form is doing the text painting almost.
Composing teachers saying like, don't Mickey Mouse, which was supposed to be like a very direct way of text painting. But I don't know. The reality is you can, even if you do Mickey Mouse, half the time people won't even notice it. So,
Right, even if
uh,
it's. I know that feeling. Like when you do something and you're like, this is really unsubtle. It's like I'm hitting the audience over the head with a brick. And then
yeah,
you ask them about it afterwards and they're like, oh, I didn't even notice. I'm like, wow.
yeah. But it is a fun thing. Like if somebody's, I don't know, taking a deep dive into your score, they'll be like, "Oh, I see what you did there." But
Yeah,
um,
it's great. Because I
and it
think
just
the.
suggests a lot of musical ideas. That's one of the things I love about using text is
Yeah.
it's just I don't know, it just really opens up your imagination in a way.
Yeah, I think text painting is incredibly inspirational on a variety of levels. In fact, I've been using text to decide what I should do with intervals or what kinds of textures I should use because there are so many different kinds of textures available. The kinds of choices you can pick almost. It
Yeah.
almost can feel overwhelming. And I think there's sort of a nice irreverence also to the Urine's arc taking up just an inordinate amount of the piece, while a piss arc is an inordinate thing to have in a poem. So I think that works out really well.
I can show you here for those of you who have the visual
Hmm.
on these sheets of these poem sheets that I was sent many years ago.
Yeah.
I would actually go in and like write down the number of syllables per line. And I think my intention was originally to do, I don't know, to see if I could do something structural with that or um I think I thought maybe that John had kind of structured that in some way. I don't think he did actually, but
Yeah.
that was something I used to do is just write down numbers of syllables.
Yeah.
So thinking it might unlock some sort of secret code, but I don't think it ever really worked out that way.
Interesting. That's
But
the
that's okay.
explanation. Good. Well, I think we've talked about some really meaningful things in movement 1. Do the movements they don't really Oh, I guess they have names because you named them. Are those your names or are they John's names?
I named them just for, because they're going to go on YouTube. The individual videos kind of need a title. So,
Right, exactly. Okay. Well, that concludes number 1, Triumphant Arc,
yeah,
then, in terms of text setting. Let's talk about number 2. Now, of course, this is the one that was
the older one. Yeah.
completed a longer time ago, right?
Yeah, I can bring up the score to that. And this is the one I probably remember less than the others just because I wrote it a long time ago.
Right.
Since it's a slow piece, I kind of really relaxed into these kind of juicy harmonies, especially at the beginning. I think I remember trying to emphasize the neutral third. So you have the bass and the tenor with the C and the D sharp, um, neutral third interval against C, F, and G, which is just kind of a diatonic thing, C, D, and F, again with the D sharp. So kind of juxtaposing the familiar with that neutral third, which is kind of weird for a
Right.
second harmonic for most, or well, for many ears.
Depending
Um,
on your ears.
exactly. And yeah, I think you can see that a lot. Like so here, C and A sharp, A flat and E and G flat. I think if I'm thinking correctly, these are all neutral third intervals that are kind of making themselves apparent in the score. So I'm just going for the most zenny intervals, but also combining them with like non-zenny intervals. And when you do that, you really get to the sort of the essence of 17, I think. And at the slow tempo, you can just kind of enjoy those very zenny sounds.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on in all of the movements of Lost and Found, things that I'm not used to hearing in 17, but they make sense when you understand it's in 17.
Yeah.
So this one's a lot more singable then, huh?
I think it's a lot maybe easier. I mean, partly because of the tempo,
Right.
um, but also there's a lot more like stepwise motion and so on.
Right.
And like there are, that like a ticker tape streamer lick from the first one is um, example of a lick that I wasn't sure like, is this actually humanly singable? Without a guide track, without breaking it up into little bits like we did in the recording.
Right.
I think with like a very good voice, I think, someone with like a lot of control who has time to learn it, it would be doable. But
Yes, I think so as well. It probably would not be. I think in a live performance, it probably wouldn't be nearly as accurate as you get in the recordings.
yeah,
You, it's one of those things where, like in a lot of microtonal projects, if you don't tune it to the grid, you can tell that a person who's used to 12 tone equal temperament is singing it, but that colors it in a way that feels real.
yeah. And
Interesting.
yeah, and there's some things in the third movement, like the vocalese stuff, which we can talk about in a little bit. That was the same thing where I was like, I don't know whether this is humanly singable. But after I spent like hours and hours mixing it, I'm like, I can almost like if I had a voice that was more under control, like a trained voice, I could probably sing it.
Hmm.
Because because I mean it starts to sound, you know, kind of natural almost.
Yeah,
But especially
absolutely.
in that piece, there are a lot of patterns that recur and come back. Not always a little bit different, but yeah, that helps. So,
Of
but anyway,
course.
in this piece, there's a lot of the stepwise motion stuff and these like little chorale-like passages here
Hmm.
and that sort of thing.
Well, I'd love to know what kind of sonorities you're aiming for, if any. I mean, you described it a little bit earlier. Would you say a lot of them are comprised of some neutral seconds and neutral thirds, but also diatonic intervals, like combinations of them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a 12 tone, 12 EDO sonority, and if I'm in a different tuning, I will sort of look at it from the point of view of that tuning. And, because sometimes you can do that in different ways. So, like, for example, here you have like this sort of weird A flat 7 sharp 5 chord.
Yeah.
Um, but for example, you could do that chord with an F sharp instead of the G flat here.
Right.
And that would be a different sound, but also kind of you can hear how the two would relate to each other.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I think the one with the F
um,
sharp would be a lot brasher because the tritone would be closer to a fifth, which is a bit wolfier, and you'd have a neutral seventh from the bottom.
yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of things like that where I kind of play with 12 EDO sonority were kind of warped into 17 in different ways. What would it sound like?
It's hard to even like spell that because there's part of me that wants to spell that as F half sharp, that top one, because then it's like, oh, you have a neutral second between the E and the top note, but then that destroys the minor seventh you get from the bass. So
Yeah.
pretty hard to figure it out. I suppose that's actually a pretty clear way to spell it, assuming that a person can figure out that E to G flat is only 2/17 of an octave, so that would just be a neutral second.
Yeah.
Diminished
Yeah,
thirds
well,
and neutral seconds
often
being the same is crazy.
yeah, I hadn't really thought of ever notating 17 with I guess you're talking about like using like kind of quarter tone-ish accidentals and stuff.
Yeah, is that that's just something you've never thought about? It's not really a limitation of the notation software.
No, it's just something I hadn't thought about
Cool, cool.
until you showed up at the session and had renotated everything
Right,
so that you weren't singing you know B flat to A sharp looks like you're going down, but you're actually
right.
going up.
Yes.
So
Did any of the singers mention that about this score? Because I noticed some of that in here as well.
I think that the folks who sang this, I mean, the only one who was like microtonally experienced with Jacob, who's also the only uh singer who was in both sessions.
Yes.
So he would have kind of maybe thought of that, but the other ones were, I think they were just mostly going by ear.
Right. Of course. That makes sense. And if you
Yeah.
memorize a guide track and just are told, hey,
Yeah.
at this one part, you're going the opposite direction, it's really not that big a deal. It's kind of funny
Yeah.
because I think there are these things that, as composers, you really try to not do to make it no fuss, no muss for the performers. Maybe assuming an impersonal situation where they're kind of there to do a gig and they don't really care about your piece that much, or they're not willing to adapt very much,
Yeah.
which is completely reasonable. But I feel like there's a lot of microtonal adaptations that aren't really that scary, and I don't know if moving up instead of down at like one part is in that area or not. It seems like kind of a gray area. It's not as wretched as like using native fifth Mavilla notation for 16 tone equal temperament. Like it's not completely wretched.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, like here I could see someone maybe would have complained
Ah, yeah, yeah,
as you're going D sharp to E flat to D sharp is
yeah.
a down and back up motion, but it looks like an up and back down motion.
Right.
But yeah, nobody really complained about that I remember. And again, it was kind of a long time ago, so
I wonder how much the singers were listening for the harmony as well. As you said, Jacob was the most microtonally experienced one. So I also think that
they wouldn't have been because we did each line separately.
okay, yeah, so they're just listening for a sense of line. I
Yeah.
actually when I went into your recording session, I was thinking I would have to know I was trying to get to know the harmony really well, and I think I really didn't have to know it that well for what you're doing because you set it up so nicely so that we just had to know the sense of line and get the repeated sections drilled in.
Yeah.
But this is, doing it live is different. Also, at the session, we sang train tracks a little bit live as well.
Yeah.
So that one
Yeah,
is
I
quite
think
possible.
if you're gonna do it live, then yeah, you have to kind of think about the harmonic implications and stuff.
I wonder what the minimum amount of people you would need to do one is so that you could stagger breathe the triumphant arc.
It looks so fragmented in the mix file,
Mm-hmm.
but it sounds pretty smooth in the final result.
That's awesome that you did all that editing. Are there any formal points in this piece that we should know of in terms of like which chords we get to or important arrivals, things like that?
Actually, if you follow the dynamics, I think that kind of, like this is the only triple forte in the piece, so that's a pretty important moment.
Ah, I gotcha.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to think like in this piece especially, I think every chord is like precious to me. Like I
Yeah.
love like kind of just luxuriating in the sounds.
Yeah. There's a lot of really interesting groups. That if you go to measure 80 or sorry, measure 90, really like that first hit with the where you have like A sharp, C and D flat. I mean, I'm thinking of A sharp as like a B half flat. So it's kind of like A B flat, C D flat and 12 tet, but you have a neutral second in it, splitting it.
Yep.
And there's just a lot of places that could go.
Yeah, and then it kind of all moves down by a step, but in a kind of weird way that you obviously could never do in 12 EDO. So
Right, yeah. So neutral third in the middle voice, when the bottom voice down a major second, and then the alto down a major second as well, but the top voice only down minor second. It's a
yeah.
very weird shift, yeah. I also feel like we talked about like ways you derived pitch material in general. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit later, or if you want,
Sure.
we could talk about it now. Up to you.
Well, I was looking at the sketch. So I believe the entire cycle is made from the same 17 note row.
Oh, cool.
I can't remember. I was trying to find the sketches for the second movement, which was the earliest one written,
Right.
and I couldn't, find like where the beginning came from exactly. But the other three movements, I have pretty clear sketches. So, for example,
Oh, neat.
well, this is train tracks. Okay, so here is triumphant arc,
Yeah.
and I believe that there's four lines that are basically four rows going simultaneously. It's not
Oh,
really,
cool.
it's not really, I don't think they're exactly split out per voice, although sometimes they kind of end up being that way.
Right.
Um, so, this is the beginning. Let me bring up the score again for that.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning with that F and C sharp going up to C sharp or D sharp and C. And then, that's that beginning part. And then here you can see the C and the D sharp and the E major chord there
Right.
and all this kind of stuff. So that's basically just like rows being counterpointed against each other. And a lot of that was sketched out. I kind of wired up 17 Edo in a piano tech session. And so
Yeah.
this is where I kind of used my it's just using my ears to when I write stuff that's based on a row, I kind of just sculpting stuff, just sculpting it with my ears. So
Right.
not like I'm like have some kind of system that's writing the music automatically or anything. It's just giving me like raw material.
So is the blue row in the Excel document at the bottom like the full tone row?
I guess so.
Oh,
Uh,
cool. I'm looking at its characteristics. So it's like comprises lots of like thirds and fourths and fifths basically. Like it's not a very secondy row until you have that 3/8 bar and you see A flat and B flat next to each other.
yeah, I might have. It's possible that I just randomly generated it.
Really?
Yeah, because sometimes I just do that and then I just use whatever it gives me and try to, make music the best I can with it.
Do you revise it if it doesn't feel random enough?
This actually, okay, this is starting to make sense. So this must be a counterpoint of two rows, and then they're distributed between the voices in different ways.
Oh, I see. So like the bottom two voices are dealing with the row in the top lane, like row 24 in your Excel document, and row 25 is the upper two voices.
Yeah, but I think it changes. Like I'm very free with how I interpret it, just
Right.
to make it work musically. So
Because you would need to bend the rules quite a bit in certain situations to get what you wanted out of a texture.
yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of using them as kind of free counterpoint and then just like distributing them between the voices as whatever will work
So you,
musically.
so you have sketches for 1, 3, and 4, and then 2 is uh whereabouts unknown because it's older.
Yes, I found some sheet from back then, but I couldn't figure out what it was trying to tell me. So,
So here, I see that we've now moved to consider this. I think
yeah,
movement
so this
three,
is the third movement.
and
Uh,
you got some text here, and I'm recognizing that might be helping you create the text visual, like in the YouTube video.
well, this was actually when I was composing it, so I
Oh, okay.
was, kind of figuring out the patterns of it's basically like a kind of old school, almost like a Philip Glass additive process kind of thing.
Yeah.
I also have I have a take on that I don't think he really used, which is, for example, if you have a sequence of events like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'll do something like 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'll like add a little to the end and take away a little from the beginning.
Right.
I don't think any of the old school minimalists did that exactly. They would usually just, expand a thing or contract it. But
Huh.
whereas I'm kind of like windowing through a passage. So
Yes. What a great name for that. I'm really
yeah,
surprised I haven't heard about that, but it makes a lot of sense as a formal idea.
yeah, and I do that in a lot of with a lot of pieces in different ways. But I think that's might have been part of how I was. Yeah, you can kind of see it here, like the build up to the word composer, and then I have
Right.
composer who, then poser who. So I take out the com, zer who, or poser who can't. So then I start to add the word can't, but I'm also subtracting the words before who and so on.
Right.
So it's kind of fun. And
Yeah.
also like sometimes it develops also sometimes you end up with words that suggest other meanings like poser is kind of a,
Right.
you know, I guess that would be somewhat insulting if you're a composer to be called a poser, but that's
Right,
part of
yeah,
the
you
fun of
can
it.
get those double meanings.
Yeah. Or
from text.
can't know is another one I think is kind of fun.
Yeah, can't no do nothing now, no how.
Yeah,
That's great. To what extent do you consider the consider to be like text painting about considering? Was that part of the process?
I don't think I was thinking of that. I think it's a short poem, so I was just thinking about, how can I take this brief text and kind of extend it in some way.
Right.
And it did seem, I don't know, maybe subconsciously I was thinking that because it did seem appropriate to set it up as a repetitive thing with like additive process and stuff like that. So,
Because movement one does that, but I think movement one doesn't do it in a way that I would describe as obsessive or stuttering as much. It does it a little bit, but not as much. And this one, you get like really stuck in an interesting way, and you wonder how you're going to get out of being stuck. And that relates to that process of windowing that you were talking about earlier.
yeah.
I'd love to know too. I mean, a lot of the interest here in the beginning, where you just have that dun 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 dun, is like about figuring out like what kinds of rhythms you wanted to use. I mean, maybe the rhythms were actually derived from the way you just wrote the text in there and like how you extrapolate the form. If there was like a certain way you did it, and then the bars just had to fall into place.
Oh, like the notation, yeah, I think the bars kind of were a second thought almost. Like I was just thinking of the patterns of the syllables and everything, and then um just trying to keep the meters wrapping around that
Yeah,
fairly simply. I mean, there's probably some places where it could be remetered to be easier to sing, possibly. It's quite possible that that's.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so kind of like a byproduct of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any plan of like what the meters would be or anything like that. It's just, in my mind, it's just a series of 16th notes
Yeah,
that are all connected in different ways.
fascinating.
Um, and I mean, I was thinking about, I think accentuation. So, so like accented syllable of consider is the sid, and so that falls on the downbeat of this bar.
Right, and then other ones would have con accented like earlier.
Yeah, and like poser is on a kind of a strong beat here,
Yeah, I
and
see.
and this a composer. So it's, yeah, I was definitely thinking of the prosody, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It just occurred to me like if consider this is full of like these sort of gradually evolving repeated fragments that slowly change into something else. Like I feel like you still have distinct areas. Like the first one is that da 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 da. That's kind of like the idea, and then
Hmm.
later where you have like can't compose or no, sorry. Oh, composer who. That's more. That's got more of a microtonal edge to it because E flat and C sharp are happening at the same time. And I feel like maybe that if you have that run on the inside with it, that's like a second distinct object. Like the first one you have is like E, F sharp, and G running up, and then the next one you have is like a chord with E flat and C sharp, and then scale runs on the inside. How many is there? I wonder how many approximate distinct objects there are in consider this like pieces that get iterated, or if maybe that's a silly question because you feel like the changes between them are also gradual. That to draw the border lines would be uh, not idiomatic to an analysis.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think here on this spreadsheet is pretty much how I was thinking about it.
Yeah,
And there might have been, I would have to stare at this a while and see if there's some kind of logic to this that's beyond just sort of what you can see there.
right.
I mean, you can kind of see like here, composer who can't, composer who can't, poser who can't. So taking off the beginning, there who can't. Actually, I'm not sure this ever happens. And then who can't know, and that happens a few times. And then we add Tate,
Yeah,
remove the who, and then we just have no Tate.
and then who can't know is really special because you hear that and you don't know that the rest of the word is notate if you haven't heard the piece yet. So
Right.
you think it's just no. So there's more of that, you know, obfuscation of meaning there through breaking up the
Yeah.
text.
Can't know who. Yeah. Oh, and then what this other thing, this is another one of those moments where uh I I just thought like I'm just kind of like, no, I can't seriously turn me you into me music. Like that's just
And
that's just tasteless.
yet here we are.
Yeah, no. So
That's
yeah,
great.
me you music. So yeah, that was kind of fun.
Very cool. And then the sick of music is resolving to a neutral third.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
wait,
there at the end.
yeah, because that's an E to A flat harmony. What's E flat to? Gosh, E flat to G sharp. I guess would be. Um. Oh, it would be a a fourth that's raised by um a, like part of a chromatic semitone, like a
E flat to, yeah, it's a very wide interval because you're going,
E flat to A half flat. Yeah, instead of E flat to A, it would be the small tritone.
yeah,
Yeah, that's neat.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So that's you get that in 17 where you have like it's E and G. It should be a third, but it's like a tritone in size.
Right, because
Kind
17
of
is
fun.
too.
Yeah,
17 is so wonky.
it is. Yeah, 22, I believe, when I wrote a piece on 22, and that
Yeah,
a lot of things like that in there.
yeah, you'll absolutely get that feeling.
Yeah, this E F sharp G. Well, I also like, this could be like any number of tunings. There's really nothing microtonal about this.
Yeah, because you just hear the minor scale going up.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, and there's lots of intonational differences that can happen there.
Yeah, and sometimes I like to play with Zen harmonics. Other times I'm just writing music, so it's just a minor scale tetrachord.
It's kind of like a little back and forth. Oh, can we see the text for Caged Rhapsodies?
Oh, sure. I
Oh
guess
yeah,
I can.
because that's an important moment where things change from having so much activity, right? And then there's like different voices entering, and then also homophony later in the next line.
Caged Rhapsodies.
Yes, when we get to here.
Yes, absolutely. 1016 and then 916.
And then this, I don't know what scale this is.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
I think I was almost thinking of it. It's not, it sounds kind of octatonic-y to me,
Yeah.
but it's not really. It's, I don't know, some kind of weird scale there.
I'm trying to think about it in terms of G flat. So you'd have like root second, neutral third, major third, um, and then I guess that G flat to C would be a large tritone,
Yeah.
then a G flat to a D. That would be the same as a neutral sixth, even though it's spelled as a fifth. So the neutral sixth, and then major sixth, major seventh octave. Wait, I'm gonna write that down. I want to maybe look that up later. There are these small steps between the neutral thirds and the neutral sixths to their respective major thirds and major sixths. Looks like you've got some like steps of 3/17ths of an octave and steps of 1/17ths of an octave.
If you think of it in G flat or even E flat, then well,
Right.
actually, if you think of it in E flat, it's got a fifth, E flat to
Oh
E
yeah.
flat here.
I guess that would be an easier way to think of it.
The upper voices are just articulating minor seventh chord, right? A F, A flat, C, E flat. So that's
Right.
another way of thinking about it is maybe the tonic of this scale is it's like an F minor somehow, or F, some kind of weird F Phrygian, F, G flat, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. So that might be, it might be better to not think of it as originating on G flat, but as rather as on E flat or maybe on F.
Oh, this is so cool. I'd really like to weigh in and see if I think it sounds more F minor 7 tonic-y or E flat tonic-y. Because, like, the E flat, right, is at the beginning of the measure. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like a primacy thing where it's like it's on the downbeat repeatedly. So it could sound like it's the tonic.
Huh.
The way you set up Caged Rhapsodies is so A flat 6 elevator that I think when you get to there, it's A flatty.
Caged rhapsodies, caged rhapsodies, caged rhapsodies. Rhapsodies, 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 rhapsodies.
Uh-huh.
Hmm. Rhapsodies, Caged Rhapsodies, Caged.
Yeah, I feel like the scale, even though it's weird, it sounds like totally natural.
Wow, yeah, yeah. Okay, because A flat and E flat are closely related to each other, and you've got a little bit of like a G flat thing going on, I think it's when the scale comes in, it's sounding a bit more E flatty to me. And the
Hmm.
F almost sounds so big compared to the E that it makes me want to think of like minor thirds from a root of E flat. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, interesting. So kind of A flatty and kind of E flatty, but not really either one, of course.
I was just noticing on my sketch, because I remember that when I read the words, I thought,
Ooh,
oh, I should do a John Cage reference. I don't
yes.
even know what I was thinking here, but there are these rhythmic rotations of, I guess, four, or they're not even rotations, just a canon 4-2-1-3. So that's where these little vocal 4-2-1-3, which is in long. This one is 4-2-1-3, and this is 4-2-1. But it comes in, this one comes in after four, this one comes in after two, this one comes in after one.
Okay.
You get this like canon, rhythmic canon structure. I
I
don't know.
love that.
I don't think that has anything to do with John Cage actually, but that's
Caged Rhapsodies, though.
yeah.
Oh, maybe you meant not John Cage, but Cage like as in the rhythm on the page almost looks like a cage, like it's encircling, which would be very good
Uh,
text painting. Because I don't know, that's not too Mickey Mouse to me.
I think that would be
Mickey Mouse would be like
that
lines on the page.
that would be yeah, I think I was thinking John Cage, but anyway, that's where it got. What was I doing here?
I'm really looking forward to what you have to say about that section.
So this is that Cage Rhapsodies. It looks like I was just being very careful about the harmonies that come out of here.
Wow. Cool.
But it's hard for me to know exactly how. Yeah, because this is each of these canons.
Yeah, like the rhythm.
Yeah, so this is a B, F sharp, C, A flat, and that voice. This is C sharp, A, E, F. So just kind of planning out.
Here, numbers on the bottom aren't row related, but rhythm related, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the pitches come from the row somehow. I can't remember how, but
Right.
yeah, I think I would have to like stare at it for a little longer before I figured out what the heck I was trying to do.
It's brilliant.
At a certain point in my life, I just started doing a lot of sketching in Excel, so
Right.
good for interviews like this.
Right, of course, yeah. But then later at the end of the piece, instead of the phrase consider, you have she repeated the phrase.
Stumbled over, stumbled over, stumbled over, stumbled, 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 stumbled. Consider, 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 composer who can, composer who can, composer who can, composer who can't know, who can't know, who can't know, who can't know, who can't notate, who can't notate, who can't notate, can't notate, notate. Over, stumble, over, stumble, over, stumble, over, stumble, 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 stumbled. She repeated the phrase. 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 She repeated the phrase.
I believe this is 2 rows against each other, and just, composing that. Oh, I think I picked 2 rows because I wanted, how I have that E, F sharp, G, A.
Yeah.
So that doesn't occur in the row that I'm using anywhere, but there are major seconds in the row. So if I take 2 rows and put the 2 major seconds together, like here I have the E, F sharp from one row and the G, A from another row.
Oh, you can create a diatonic fragment.
Yeah, and then I just, whatever the other pitches are kind of come before and after that, I work them into the structure. So that's where we get the B and the D flat, B flat at the beginning of the piece.
Yeah, that's the stumbled over chord. That's the one I'm trying to find a little bit later. Oh yeah.
Then you have the E, F sharp, G, A, and then you have the from the beginning where it says can't, lands on this E flat, C sharp.
Yeah.
A sharp dissonance here.
Right.
Notate is the A D here. And then that also comes back at the end of the piece with the word phrase on the C sharp and E flat.
Yes.
And then the A sharp and A. And then ending on the A and the D. And then the final lick of the piece is she always stumbled, and that's these little dyads here, G flat G to E, A flat to E flat, E sharp.
She always stumbled over.
I wanted to get that E, F sharp, G, A, just simple diatonic thing. So how was I going to get that using my row? Well, I would have to put it together with another row, and then I have to use up all this stuff in some way.
Right.
So that's where the stumbled over and these like weird Zen harmonic things come from, C sharp and E flat, etc.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool to see the connection between those 2 rows and the sonorities or sort of objects you've ended up deciding upon. It was much more clear cut in terms of borderline than I suspected, even though you're windowing over. And the stumbled over chord I think is so distinctive because you play stumbled over a little at the beginning, and then you play it at measure 123, and it comes back, and I think we recognize it from the beginning because of that neutral second harmonizing it from B flat to B, and then B flat to D flat as a minor third on the outside. The very fun way to deal with microtonal harmony is to have a minor third that's split in half somehow. Although I think people more often will do that with like 22-tone equal temperament. Ooh, there's also another little clever thing I'd love to get to. At a certain moment where you mentioned practicing piano, there's at measure 116, there's a phrase that is jumping across the ensemble so that it sounds like the person is saying practicing.
right.
But they have it broken up across different voices.
Yeah, this looks like the moment where that happens. And that's the C sharp, G, D sharp, B flat. I guess that is 1 row, that C sharp, G, D sharp to B flat, but it's split across the voices.
It looks like you're preserving a sense of line, so it'd be interesting to know, like, if you broke your own pattern just so that the line in the row could match, or whether that was just something you were already doing.
Well, I'd like to say I was trying to avoid the voices leaping around too much, but some of them are leaping around a lot, so.
Yeah.
Because here you have like an upward leap of a major sixth. Might have just been, I love I do a lot of hocketing things in this whole cycle, and so I might have just been going for that kind of effect. So one of the lyrics is accompanying his thoughts with Cage Rhapsodies. So
Right.
accompanying,
Composer.
that is, yeah, there's a little bit of compo in there, some sort of phonemic resemblance. But inside accompanying is ompa.
Hmm.
And so there's that whole melisma section, which starts on measure 46 here. There's this whole ompa stuff in the background.
Right.
And so that kind of comes from the poem. That kind of comes from the word accompany.
Right. Right. Oh, I see.
So the middle of the word is just ompa. And so I'm kind of
Right.
using part of that word as its own accompaniment, so to speak. And
Yes,
then,
that's very clever.
yeah, and then when we get to the end of the piece, that same kind of texture, well, not the end of the piece, but this practicing piano section, that same texture with the dat 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 dat, kind of little pause, uh, emphasizing the harmony, kind of bringing that back. It
You've done so much with so little text.
was fun to just dig into the text and see what I could get out of it. I think we haven't talked about the melismas. This is where the part that I thought like, oh man, nobody could ever sing this in real life. But like I said, having listened to it 1,000 times, I think that I think that it is actually fairly singable. And there's a lot of repetition
Yeah.
where these lines either are repeat or they kind of double back on themselves or whatever. And actually, I remember when I was writing it, so I wrote this first section from measure 46 to 67 here.
6-7, you say?
Yeah, and then I thought, yeah, that's for the Gen Alpha or whatever.
The kids are now hooked.
So I wrote that and then I thought, oh, well, maybe that's too hard, so maybe I should make it more hocketed, so no one voice is because this is putting all the burden of that melisma on one voice, the tenor one.
Ah, I see.
And so then I thought I should rewrite it so it doesn't put all the burden on that one voice. So that's what, starting at 69, it's kind of a lot of the same harmonies and so on, but it's split up between the voices completely differently. So I call this the Hockatus section.
Ha ha ha.
But if you look at like the harmonies are very similar and stuff. It's just everything's kind of distributed differently. But anyway, in the end, I decided to keep them both because they both kind of put a different stamp on the material.
Originally, having the more Hockaday section between voices was an economical concern, but you decided in the end that aesthetically you'd like them both as well. Does part of that come
Yeah.
from the notion that splitting it between the voices will also sound noticeably different, like in the mix? Did you put the voices in different places? We're getting into a bit of foreshadowing since it's
Yeah,
almost
so
mix time.
when I did the mixing, it's like very simple. I just put like the lowest voice on the far left and the highest voice on the far right, and so on.
Oh, right.
So you should hear, if you've got headphones, you should be able to hear the difference between those things. Also, I think at a certain point, so at the very beginning of this, I think it actually is almost exactly the same notes, just distributed differently. But eventually, you get into this thing where it does like these echoes, where it's doing like com pa, which I think is one of the more effective little gesture things in the piece. That kind of repetition going bouncing back and forth between two voices and stuff.
And you have a company as a sub, like a fragment of that word that
Yep.
sounds like another word as well. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also I noticed this after the fact that I switch the gender, which doesn't happen at all in the poem.
Oh, trans anthem. Very good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is her thoughts with, and then so on. And then here I believe it becomes his thoughts. So
Right.
I don't know. I must have done that subconsciously or something.
Oh, it's in the poem.
Yeah, it's just that in the poem they never use the word her.
It could even be that there's a scene change. The way I read that,
Yeah,
consider
I think
this.
you're right.
Yeah. Accompanying his thoughts with caged rhapsodies, that's the composer. And then there's another person practicing piano. She repeated the phrase she always stumbled over. That's, could be a
Right.
person who's practicing the composer's work. Or it's something else.
Yeah. So I guess I kind of composed my own addition to that where is the composer the one who's practicing piano or maybe not? Who knows?
Yeah, sort of heightening the confusion between those like stanzas of text. Or the ambiguity, I should say.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, can we look at movement 4?
Yeah, let's do that. So movement 4 is like this pretty much the simplest one of the whole cycle. It's just 2 pages.
And in this one, it's actually, I think, maybe most easy to see the rows because the notes change the most often and you don't have these large units of small groups of notes that take lots of time.
I think I did the same thing where, yeah, so I imagined this nice where you're kind of an E major and then you have the like fall to the 7, 6, 5 scale degrees. Like I think I heard that in my head. It's kind of a maybe not a cliche, but like a very natural choral kind of thing to do, I think.
I've heard that called non-diatonically in rock music, literally the line cliche. Like in Stairway to Heaven where you take the bass line and just move it down chromatically by semitone.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not chromatic here, it's just diatonic.
Right. I just thought that
Um,
would be interesting to bring up since you mentioned it.
yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, I started by wanting to do that. So this is another one of those cases where just like in the third movement, I wanted that A E F sharp G A. So that kind of told me what rows I was going to use to put the piece together. So I think the same thing happened here where I wanted this E, G sharp, D sharp, etc., going down to C sharp. So that kind of told me what like 2 rows I needed to put against each other to make that happen at some point. And in order to make that work, I needed this thing at the very beginning, and that's that introductory chord, C sharp, B, F.
Yeah, that's a good chord.
And then it also kind of gives me the material that happens after that. So again, it's pretty informal, like just taking 2 rows, combining them into nice sounding chords and trying to make some voice leading that makes sense and so on.
Yeah, with some E major tonality in like the first line, I suppose. A lot of that seems like it comes from just the notes arriving on something that's actually triadic and then sounding like
Yeah.
E, and so you're kind of gravitates towards that.
Yeah, I'm definitely consciously finding tonal resting places. So there's this E flat major, and then I love this moment where it switches from E flat major to minor. That's a nice, like, haunting. They're almost like these. I feel like I worked in a lot of like kind of choral cliches almost, but in this weird microtonal context. So
Yeah, no, it's so cool to hear them
kind of fun.
through that lens. I feel like there's a lot of tired tropes that take on a whole new light when you microtonalize them, and the distance between like the G to the G flat there in measures 8 to 9 is so large that you hear the shift from major to minor that way in 17.
It's a nice text painting maybe because summer is like this bright, happy thing, but then you hear it in minor and you're like, ooh,
Right.
maybe this summer is going to be kind of weird.
Yeah. Do you ever call such a thing reverse text painting? Is that a term? Or maybe that's just still text painting. I don't know.
I definitely consciously think of that sometimes where I'll kind of go against the text in some way
Right.
in the music for whatever reason.
If you do it in a way that doesn't seem like a violation, it can be part of the craft as well. There's a few pieces I have that you might be aware of that use text painting one way and reverse text painting another way on the same phrase. So I think that's a very interesting kind of device, is going
Yeah,
against the text but doing so in a way that feels right.
yeah.
And I see this major second sonority with Scorching in the Sun, D flat and E flat. So that's probably towards the end of the row, although not quite the very end, because you have very last chord there. The last chord, a D major chord with a C sharp in the bass. Very cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of echo of the this E major with D sharp in the bass
We used to take an
from the beginning.
Oh. Oh, I didn't even pick up on that.
So
That's
basically, it's like a inversion of a major seven
right.
chord. So that's kind of, I guess, part of the sound of this movement.
Right. When you have like these diatonic sonorities, but they're inverted in an unresolved way, that's definitely its own aesthetic. And I think it's
Yeah.
particularly nice that that happens in a way such that you've had D flat beforehand, which is below both C sharp and D in this tuning system. So you get the microtonal idea of hearing a D flat and then hearing a note lift up, but having that be like the major seventh of this D major seven chord at the end.
Yeah. Oh, another thing is this major ninth
Yeah.
that happens here.
Yeah.
So that might be an echo of the first movement, yeah, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
What I call the snare drum in my sketches, where
Oh,
you
I
have
noticed that.
this ninth interval here that's very important in that piece. So
scorching, scorching in the yeah, yeah, yes, 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 yeah, yeah, yes.
that's kind of cool. I don't know whether I was thinking of that consciously, but
Kind of a callback. And the rhythm, similarly, I think looks a little bit different than what's come before.
yeah.
Very cool. I love it.
Yeah, it seemed like the right interval for scorching. I don't know how, but
It seemed right to me too. I was thinking that as I was singing it. It seems maybe a bit bare, so perhaps evocative of the desert or a place without life because it's been scorched.
yeah, exactly. Here's some Mickey Mousing for you. Rusty Spikes with this accent.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Oh man, I wonder what he could be doing. Exactly.
But there's some like kind of weird hocketing here, so maybe that kind of breaks it up from being,
Because you're shaking it loose.
yeah, exactly.
Wow. Very cool. I love it. So, those of you who are listening might know that Chris got to spend an astronomical amount of effort on this because he recorded us in very short segments. So, that meant that he had to edit everything together. So, Chris, I'd be really curious to learn how your workflow in this operated, like where everyone's voices went and, how you distribute all of our voices. Because I think, if I recall correctly, all of us sang all the parts many times. You can mix and match with effectively any combination you want with the four of us singing everything. I assume Jacob was probably used a lot for like the bass sounds because he can hit those low notes really effectively and that kind of thing.
Actually, I pretty much used everybody for everything.
Oh, okay. Roughly equal with how many people are on each part. Like there wasn't a part where you were like, "Oh, Thomas isn't blending here. Steven is too loud here."
There were definitely like little instances like that where, and I would sometimes have, two Jacobs and one Steven, or I don't know, like for example, on some of the really low bass notes, Thomas was the best singer for those, so I would just have
Yeah.
like three Thomases or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I had if we're looking here, this is the mix for the Triumphant Arc.
Yeah.
So each voice part here has 9 tracks.
Wow.
And that's basically 3 tracks for, one for each of you guys.
Right.
And generally, and that's so I can kind of splice things together, as you can see. And then here's the second voice part. Again, 9 more tracks. Third voice part, 9 more tracks. A
Right.
total of 36 tracks
Yeah.
getting mixed there. And so if you zoom in, you can see, most of the time I have Jacob Stephen Thomas, Jacob Stephen Thomas. But occasionally probably find one where
Oh yeah, it would be interesting to find one that that deviates because Oh, if the tracks are in groups of three, then you have
Actually, I should
like
open.
the three of us in a row, and then the three of us in a row twice more.
Yeah, let me. This is so in order to use, because I did use a lot of Melodyne at the end.
Yeah.
In order for Melodyne to work, you have to kind of glue everything together because if there's lots of separate bits, it gets horribly confused,
Yes, I've noticed that too.
and so do you. So let me go back to an earlier version where I hadn't where I hadn't glued everything together, because then you can see.
You can see how many times the clips are split up.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so here you can see the splices a lot more
Oh
clearly.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
looks like, but most of the time, like I said, I am using all three of you guys. Oh, this is for the glissando section at the well,
Oh, what sorts of situations did you need Melodyne for? You said you needed it at the end, right?
yeah, I didn't use it till the end, till the very end. So I tried to just make everything work without it. And then
Right.
I decided I might as well like try to get it working. Let's see what's going on here.
If I had to guess, it would be that you used it maybe a lot during like faster parts where it was a lot harder to get the pitches.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
This looks like before I started using Melodyne, so
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you use Melodyne as a plugin to individual tracks, or did you export tracks, Melodyne them, and then put them back in?
oh, this, by the way, this is the really long glissando, so you can kind of see.
Oh, look at all that splicing.
Yeah.
It's a brick wall. Loudnosaurus, everyone. Oh,
Um,
yay. This looks like it is more intense hocketing parts.
yeah, this is the ticker tape.
Ticker tape. Yay.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, most of the time you're all singing. I'm trying to find an example where I, you know, only used like Jacob or something, but
If you have these files here, that means if you have one for like Jacob and Thomas and Stephen, you found the that means that in each of these individual spliced instances, you found the best take for every single one of those, and there were like 20 takes for almost all of them, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Whew.
You remember how we recorded it? Let's see, do I still have, I think this version. Yeah, so this is the raw audio over here,
Ah, okay.
I believe. So this is showing like this is like raw audio of the glissando, and this is raw audio of the, I don't know, other things. And this is like, let's see, this is, yeah. So these are just like sections of the piece. So what I would do is just go here and listen to like these three. This is pissing.
Yeah.
So there's like three takes of that. So I would like go through and like find the one I thought ones that I thought sounded best. So
Right.
usually I would grab like the three of you. Ideally I would grab the three of you, like I would say, okay, this sounds good. So I would come in here, cut this bit and like add it into the main mix. Now every once in a while I'd be like, oh, you know, Thomas sounds weak here. So then I'd say, all right, I'm going to take this Jacob recording and put it against these other two recordings. So I'd do some exchanges like that.
Right.
But ideally, it wasn't quite as tedious as you might think, because I would, by the 20th take, like I had everybody singing 20 takes. So ideally, the last five takes were great for everybody. So I could just like say, all right, I'll take number 18, 19, and 20 and use those in the actual mix. Boom, done.
Quite helpful part of the process. And it also looks like here then that you didn't have to splice individual pairs of notes for every single take. Like if the material was repeated enough, you could take like, 3 iterations of it or so and use that.
Yeah.
So that saves on time as well.
Yeah.
Okay, neat.
So it was tedious, but it wasn't like quite as insane. I guess in the long run it was kind of insane, but it
Yeah.
felt doable going step by step, I guess is what I would say.
This is so cool. What effect do you think this splicing approach had on the sound quality of the end product, the recorded music? What kinds of things do you hear?
I think it works pretty well. One thing I didn't realize, I was talking to a guy who has put together these like recordings of Milton Babbitt's orchestral work, and they do a similar thing where they record like small fragments and so on. But when it comes to like the mass strings, they had done this one piece. And when I first heard the mix, I thought, oh, this doesn't quite sound like a real orchestra. There's something kind of fake about the strings or something. And then later I was talking to the guy who did it, and he said, oh yeah, that's because if you just record the same player, even if they do like 5 different takes, there's going to be like they're using the same instrument probably. They have the same way of playing, like vibrato, the same kind of way they attack notes, etc.
Right.
All that stuff lines up, and it creates a certain thing that you don't get if you have a real orchestra with like 17 different violin players or something that all play things differently. And then somebody else was saying, "Oh yeah, that's a feature." I forget what music they were talking about. It was like Mexican or maybe Cuban music or like the kind of stuff where they have like brass instruments, and they'll have like one guy record like all the parts, but
Yeah.
all of his like attacks and everything are like the same on all the instruments and so on because he is who he is. And
Right.
so that gives it this like certain sound that you wouldn't have if you had like 20 different players. That was interesting to talk about. I hadn't even really thought about that because I had done the first Lost and Found things and that worked so well, I thought. And that was, partly we had like 4 different singers there, so that was um not as noticeable, but I think but this one is maybe a little bit noticeable that all the voices are kind of, it's basically the same voice on every part, right? Because all 3 of you sang everything.
Right.
So,
I can hear some distribution, interestingly enough. I think I hear some of me in the train tracks one in some of the held notes, and I hear some of Jacob too. Although it's blended really well, of course, you just sometimes get those individual characteristics coming out.
yeah, I like that. I like that aspect of it too.
That sameness of attack is why, like, Jacob Collier does it, like, too good, and then he gets accused of being a robot. I wonder to what extent you can purposely offset that in your own playing by sprinkling your gestures with a little bit of indeterminacy or
Chorusing yourself is a tale as old as time in the pop world, certainly. So
did you
that's
have a different approach to that because of the microtonality? Because I know that with some tuning systems, if they're fine enough, I think there's an avoidance of the chorusing effect because it could mess with the purity of the tuning, but it also gives you a bigger sound. So it's a little bit of a complicated issue, but maybe you didn't really need to worry about that so much.
I think 17, the intervals are wide enough that you can, do chorusing without worrying about being off by the interval of the system or whatever.
Right.
I don't know where
Absolutely.
that threshold would be. Like, if you were doing like 31 tone, you'd have to have a scale of probably 20 cents or something is where you start getting into chorusing territory, I would think. Does that
We
sound
could
right?
use Derek's very nice intermediate measure of somewhere around the realm of 45 to 55 notes, which is probably also when an equal temperament starts to lose its individual character or sound.
Is that what? So he was saying that's like sort of the maximum equal temperament that you can get without things starting to get silly or something like that.
I don't think he was exactly referring to chorusing, but I think there's a number of phenomena that all collapse under the idea of having one note and then having the next note be far enough apart that definitely everyone who's paying attention will know that it's a different note in most circumstances. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
somewhere around the realm of 45 to 55, you get scenarios where it might be hard to tell one to the next, or like the tuning gets so large that you might as well use just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, 48 tones is eighth tones, and there are
With
definitely situations.
25 cents.
Yeah, and there are definitely situations where I don't hear two notes an eighth tone apart
Right.
as being different. There are certainly situations like that.
Oh, yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. Did you use any effects in the final product? Like, what was your stance toward like reverb, compression, all of that stuff?
I think just reverb, maybe some compression in there
Yeah.
a little bit, but I didn't get the thing like I usually get things officially pro mastered, but I didn't do that in this case. I'm still think of it as a little bit of a work in progress, even though I have it up on YouTube and everything. But at some point, I may like release it as part of an album. In that case, I'll have like somebody do a mastering of it, but I
Oh,
haven't done that
cool.
yet.
That's
So,
fascinating.
but mostly I kind of left alone. I just put some pretty simple reverb on it.
Nice job. Are there any situations where you added more voices for effect on a part? Or did all of them have generally the mix of Jacob Stephen Thomas with some exceptions? There's no part where one line is doubled by like 9 voices, right? Or maybe you would
There are,
orchestrate that as
no,
part
I
of the
think there
choir if it
are
needed to exist.
there are some sections where I did double or triple. Yeah, like here's the yeah yeah yeses. And I think I found like the bass to be a little weak, so I actually doubled the bass, which is to say I have 6 voices on the bass. So there's 2 Jacobs, 2 Stevens, 2 Thomases. Whereas this part, I just have a Jacob Stephen Thomas. So I do yeah, so I double things sometimes. Or
Yeah.
here's even well, this is probably more for the Hocketing. But but yeah, I mean I do use, like I said, for each of the voice parts I have 9 tracks, and sometimes I've got all of them going. A lot of times it's because you have overlapping uh Hockets. So you have like the ticker, then the Cur tape, and
Yeah.
the um tape streamer,
Right.
etc.
Were there any extra editing challenges for splicing parts where two pairs of where like a pair of notes is glued together at a time and overlapped? Were there any funny vowels or things like that?
Mostly with a whole bunch of voices singing, it kind of works itself out. I mean, if you listen to like
Yeah,
one voice, it would sound weird. Chorusing going on, it kind of covers over the weirdness.
I see. It's kind of like how if you're editing and you splice two things together, there's like a weird little artifact, but if you have other things going on, it's quite covered up and you don't hear it, and it just sounds
Yeah.
like, part of the natural sound of whatever's occurring.
Yeah, so you do kind of rely on that a bit, especially in this. But yeah, there's definitely some artifacts that you need to cover up, and that kind of works itself out in the end. That particular kind of splicing, I carefully tested that like really early on when I was writing the piece. I like sang it myself, and I said, can this actually work? And that was why, and I did a kind of a test of it, and I was like, okay, I think that'll work. And
Yeah,
then I
like
then I went ahead and wrote the thing. Still not entirely sure that it was going to work with when it was all said and done, but
yeah.
everything worked out pretty well. The thing I was worried the most about was that those glissandos. I thought that I'm never going to get that to work, but that worked out really surprisingly well, even though I had
I
to.
can see the the arc, the triumphant arc. It's
Yeah,
even
so
a
what I
little
had to
yellow.
do what I had to do there, like, yeah, like this looks like crazy broken up stuff here, right? All these little segments. But this is all um just smooth as butter in the final mix. And the way I did that was I have like a demo electronic, and I would just take each individual's recording of the glissando and try to like line it up against that electronic thing with the minimum of beating. And sometimes like if your particular voice was starting to beat against it, I would just create a splice and then move it over just a little bit, and then it would like not beat as much.
Right.
And then maybe, Jacob, I would have to do the reverse and move it back a little bit. And so eventually I got it, as kind of as good as I got every individual voice as good as I could against the electronic thing.
Yeah.
And then when I played them all back together, like it just kind of gelled really nicely. Like with the chorusing effect, you don't mind the little bits of beating as much as you would if you were just listening to one voice against an electronic part. So that worked out really nicely. But
Did you have to adjust voice volume of individual clips at all, or not too much?
not too much, just a lot of making sure everything faded in and out smoothly. Because you can see in the mix here that it looks like it's going to be like very splotchy, but it doesn't really sound like that. Especially once you put reverb on it, it just really washes over nicely. So
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing these details of the process with us. Feel very inundated into this piece, and it's such a great work. It really stands tall among the microtonal choir works, the recorded works. And I think it would be really cool if people did want to perform it live, even outside of 2 and 4. And I think you could find people dedicated enough who would make it possible.
yeah, that would be great. I would love to hear somebody tackle it in that way.
That'd be incredible, yeah.
Well, thanks for talking to me about them.
Yeah, it was a great time as always.
Stumbled over, stumbled over, stumbled over, stumbled, 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 stumbled. Consider this, 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 consider this a composer, 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 composer who composer who can, composer who can, composer who can, composer who can, composer who can. Know who can't know who can't know who can't know who can't notate who can't notate who can't notate can't notate me.
The music you're hearing is from Lost and Found Things, Movement 3, Consider This, by Christopher Bailey. If you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, you can leave a review on iTunes and spread the word through social media. We appreciate all of our supporters on Patreon, our Zen Harmonic patrons, as well as our Zen Harmonic gods, Jacob G., Peter Young, Naren Rattan, Matthew Sheeran, Hector McGuffin, Christopher Bailey, Leland O. Weigel, Amy Coleman, Jill Weigel, and Tina Harmon Cartel. Remember, if you're not already doing so, you can support the podcast on Patreon. The lowest tier is only $5 a month, and you get to support a great cause, promoting microtonal music in all its delightful forms. Link is in the description. Of course, you can also find the links in the description to Lost and Found Things on YouTube by Christopher Bailey, the subject of this episode. Thanks for listening, and in the next few months we'll have J.I. July and Alien August. Catch you next time on Now and Zen.